Imagine taking your car to the Mercedes dealership and then they send it down the road to the Jiffy Lube and charge you double. You're just paying a premium to make sure that the watch you're buying is not stolen, it's not fake. I walk into this store, there's this guy sitting behind the counter in a chair, he's rocking back and forth and he's smoking a cigarette. You're not allowed to smoke inside at this point, and he's just smoking a cigarette. And he's, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, would like to apply for a job." And he starts screaming for his wife in the back room. He's like, Rhonda, come out here. And she runs out. She's like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "What's your name?" I'm like, "John." He's like, "Meet our new employee, John." And that's and that was it.
Welcome to Dealer Out of Office. We're your hosts. I'm Frank Zombo.
I'm Jake Berkal, and we are here to talk to you about dealers' interests outside of the office.
Now watch this drive.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Dealer Out of Office. As always, I'm your host, Jake Berkal, alongside my good buddy, Frank Zombo. And we are talking about something today that a lot of you dealers, a lot of the people that we've met in this industry are kind of passionate about. And Frank, I got to say, like, I'm mad at you, but I love you for getting me into this, because you were kind of the first one that brought me into the world of watches. And it's taken a little bit of a hit on my bank account, but it's something that that we're going to get into in terms of like appreciation and collecting and everything like that. But a guy that we have as a guest today, John Shiha, is probably the dude when it comes to watches, correct?
John is the dude when it comes to watches, luxury items. And not that John's cocky by any means. He's like one of the most humble dudes in the world, but just has a knack for the finer things in life in a way. And he's one of the general managers of Lucido Fine Jewelry, and he brings and we'll talk more about it, but the sense of watchmaking and the appreciation for the machinery and the artistry of watchmaking is what John really brings to the table here.
Love that. So John, welcome to Dealer Out of Office, my friend. Happy to have you.
I appreciate the introduction. Thank you, Frank, for that.
Yeah.
Very nice of you to say. But yeah, I definitely am passionate about watches. I'm very fortunate that I was able to make a lifelong career, since I was 14. I've been in this industry and I've been able to make this like my job, right? So
let's start with that, right? Like, we always want to kind of start from the beginning. Like, all right, you're 14 years old. How do you get into this? What piqued your interest, and kind of take us through those first couple of years and then to where you are now?
And I want to say something before that. Lucido Fine Jewelry is so we're all in Southeast Detroit, and that's like the jewelry brand
of the only place I go.
The Detroit suburbs, right? And so John, growing up in this area, just to give you some context of John and like how we're all came to this point right here is But John, how did you get into watchmaking? Tell us your journey, and then how you got into Lucido Fine Jewelry as well.
Okay, so I'll give you the kind of the long version. My uncle, my dad's twin brother, had a jewelry store in Windsor, Canada. And when I was younger, he would come over with like a Bulova on or an Accutron on, and I'd say, "Oh my God, that watch is so sweet." And he'd let me try it on. And then usually for Christmas or my birthday, he would buy me, one of the watches that I said, "Oh my God, that was so sweet." So he, that's what you do for your favorite nephew, obviously. And so he was super generous and always would, get me watches. And it was really the sweetest guy. And I'll never forget, we were having a Sunday dinner at my grandmother's house, and he had just started carrying the line Breitling in his store in Canada. And I'm like, "Wow, that watch is so sweet. Let me try it on." He's like, "You can try it on, but you're probably not getting one of these, because he would usually buy me whatever, $200 Bulova he had on at the time, right? So he was like, "Yeah, this is," and he said a number like $8,000 or $9,000, and this is, 2002, and so I'm like blown away. And I went home and I plugged my computer in to the phone line and put in a free version of Netscape that I found in a pile of mail, and basically just went nuts. It was that night. I was up till like 2:00 in the morning, and I'm sure my parents were like, I wonder what he's doing on the internet. But I was reading about watches, and I was on Patek's website and Rolex's website and Breitling's website, and just kind of figuring out a lay of the land. And I think at that day was when I became enamored with watches. So I was probably about 12, and my grandfather, who started a landscaping company, just so my brother and I had no lives outside of school or church. He's retired and then started a landscaping company. And I remember sitting in the work truck with him, and I was about like 14. And I told him, I was like, I think I want to work at a jewelry store this summer. And we were at a red light, and he looked at me, turned his head. He was, are you crazy? You're making like $140 a week cash. Like, you're living the life. This is the best possible thing you could be doing right now. You're not going to work at a jewelry store. That's not a thing. So I go back to my grandparents' house, and my grandmother, she's like, my Lebanese grandmother, I call her Situ. And she's like, Habibi, what's wrong? Something's bothering you. And I'm like, no, nothing. She's like, no, what's wrong? Something's bothering you. I'm like, well, I want to work at a jewelry store this summer. So the next morning I wake up at their house. I go outside. My grandfather's having coffee, and he looks at me. He's like, really? You told Situ? And I'm like, no, she asked. And he's like, fine, here's what's going to happen. We're going to start an hour earlier. You're going to cut grass till the afternoon. We'll be done by 3. You can shower, change, and you can go find a job at the mall from 4 till 9 o'clock when they close. I'm like, great. And I was so happy. I felt like somebody did me the biggest favor in the world, that I was able to work 13 hours a day. Right. So the closest mall was a mall called Eastland Mall, which was no longer there. I'm sure a lot of people on this probably know Eastland. So I walked around at every single jewelry store in there, and it was so funny because the mall was like a loop, and I started at one store and went around the loop, and it was the very last store I worked in after everybody told me. It was the last store that I walked in, rather, after everybody told me, no, we're not hiring. No, you're too young. No experience. I walk into this store. There's this guy sitting behind the counter in a chair. He's rocking back and forth, and he's smoking a cigarette, right? And you're not allowed to smoke inside at this point. And he's just smoking a cigarette, and he's, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I'd like to apply for a job. And he starts screaming for his wife in the back room. He's like, Rhonda, come out here. And she runs out. She's like, what's wrong? He's like, what's your name? I'm like, John. He's like, meet our new employee, John. And that was it. And I was like, great. And I was like, when should I start? He's like, right now. Grab that Windex and that paper towel. And he used to put I'm so serious. He used to put his cigarettes down on the countertop, like on the Formica showcases, and it would leave like brown marks on it. And he was like, every time he's like, go around the whole store and clean off every single cigarette mark. And that was my first day in the jewelry industry and my first jewelry store job. Super sweet people, treated me like a son. That store was called Mike's Jewelry in Eastland Mall, and it was wildly different than what we do now at Lucido Fine Jewelry, but it's where I started. So that was how I got interested and got into this career.
I love that. So I guess my initial question to that is, like, you're there, how do you move up the ranks? So, like, personally, my experiences with Lucido have been nothing but phenomenal, but the intricacies of it all and learning that. So, I mean, is this just trial by fire? Is this guy teaching you? Are you doing the learning on your own time? Because, I mean, the intricacies of these watches and diamonds and everything like that is far beyond my knowledge. So where are you picking all this up while you're cleaning cigarette marks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so that started when I was 14, and, I was doing batteries, straps, repairs on watches. They had a jeweler in house, so I wasn't really messing with jewelry, but they knew I was interested in watches, and I was kind of learning, trial by fire. I broke a few things for sure at that time, and had some things that I couldn't do or didn't know how to do. But I learned basically practicing on people's watches as they came in. And then I got very fortunate actually, and I definitely think this was, not necessarily a coincidence, but I wasn't really the best student in high school, outside of showing up for football practice, or you know showing up for something other than class or tests or work. I didn't have the greatest attendance, and so one of our counselors came up to me and he was like, "Hey, aren't you like always wearing a fancy watch?" And at the time, it was like a Fossil or something, and I was like, "Yeah, obviously, like, yeah, I always have a sweet watch." Yeah, I was like, "Yeah, you're looking for the right guy. You found him." And so he's like, "Well, there's a watch repair program that you can go to, at what was called the Career Prep Center at 15 Mile and Van Dyke, so right across from Sterling Heights High School, and you go there half of your day basically, and you get credit. And they're like, one of the programs they have is watch repair." And I'm like, "Well, I'm in. Sign me up." He's like, "Well, hold on. You have to show up every day, because if you miss like 4 days, you don't get credit, and it's half of your credits for your junior and senior year. You're not going to graduate." So I'm like, "Sign me up. I'll show up every day. I'll do it." So, which was really crazy to know that this was the last high school level watch repair program in North America at the time.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Like, between Canada, US, no one had a high school level watch repair program. And the instructor at that program, a gentleman named Arnie Van Team, Rochester Hills native, you'll see him around town, just an absolute stud. He was super impactful in my career and in my training. So I would go there half of my day, my junior and senior year, showed up every single day. I think I was the top student in the class at the time. And he's like, "Rolex has a school in Pennsylvania. I think you should apply to it." And after my, halfway through my senior year, I applied and started that process. And I was really applying as a formality, because they really didn't want young people right out of high school, because the thought process was, maybe you don't really know that you want to do this as a career. And so I applied, and my parents drove me down for an interview to Lititz, Pennsylvania. And I got accepted. And because I'm a September baby, I think I was one of the youngest people to be accepted, if not the youngest person ever to be accepted to that program. And it's not like college, right? I've gone to college and got a finance degree. It's way more intense. You're there for 8 hours a day. It's make or break. It's a different level of stress, right? And you're in the middle of this Rolex service center, and you're going to school with Rolex executives working upstairs. And it was really, really intense. So that's kind of how I made my way into the formal watch repair world and watchmaking world, was going through that program.
Jeez. So from there, as I love this part of John's story, I don't know if you even my 7-8 years of knowing John gone into that detail of the level of his knowledge of watchmaking, but I love the next part of his journey is meeting Vince Lucido and then wanting to get into there. And like, it kind of reminds me of almost the way you're kind of walked, like looking for the next job. Right. And kind of talk about your journey with Vince a little bit to get into Lucido Fine Jewelry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd been working, so I finished watchmaking school in 2010, and I'd been working in the industry for a while. And I realized there was a huge opportunity for watch repair in Michigan. There was nobody fixing watches to the quality or the standard that really the end consumer deserves, right? It's like, imagine taking your car to the Mercedes dealership, and then they send it down the road to the Jiffy Lube and charge you double. And you're like, what's going on, right? So it was almost like, I almost was like, from an ethical level, I was like, this is not what the consumer deserves in Michigan. And Michigan has a very, very strong collector and watch market. It's stronger than people even realize. And I went to my previous employer, who I basically went to him and said, "Listen, I'm leaving for a year because I got to finish my degree." I went back to school to get a finance degree, and I was like, "I got too many credits to take. I'm just going to take a year off. Let's talk about the future in a year." So I go back to this employer at the time, and I said, "Hey, let's start a service center together. Let's start the biggest watch repair service center ever in Michigan, for sure, at least, maybe not if not the country. And he said, yeah, I like that idea. And we went to lunch and we went to dinner and there was a business plan. And kind of in the last hour, this person was like, hey, I'm not going to have a business partner. I'll give you a salary. We can do this. And I was like, hey, no hard feelings, all good. And we just kind of walked away from that scenario. And I was really bummed out because we were coming to the end and it looked like we were going to make a deal. And really in the final hour, they were, this other guy was like, no partner, no equity. And I knew I wanted equity. I knew I wanted to be, be a business owner. And of course, I'm back at my grandmother's house for a Sunday dinner. And we had Sunday dinner. The next morning, Monday, I had an office where I just hustled watches, flipped watches, sold engagement rings to buddies, just did whatever I could to pay my bills at the time. And my dad took the day off work and my uncle took the day off work, and they show up to my office unannounced on a Monday. And I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? What a surprise. And they're like, sit down. And I'm like, I'm so confused. And they're like, listen, you weren't yourself yesterday. You hardly talked and you didn't make us laugh once. Something's wrong. What's going on? They thought like I was terminally sick or something because I wasn't funny. And so we sit down. I'm like, listen, I wanted to surprise you guys. I was working on this deal and I had everything set up, and this, they don't want me to have equity. They don't want me to be a business partner, and I'm not doing that. And my uncle, the one in the jewelry industry, looks at me and he's like, well, what do you need them for? I said, well, I need a Rolex dealer, right? Rolex is not going to give parts to me to fix watches out of this 600 square foot office. And he's like, well, just find another Rolex dealer. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, call another Rolex dealer if you need a Rolex dealer. He's like, I met Vince and Joe Lucido at a show one time, and they seem like nice guys. Why don't you call them? I'm like, okay, I will. And he's like, call them now. And I'm like, okay. So I go on Google. I get the Sterling Heights phone number. I call up here, and I don't know how, but by the grace of God, I get Vince Lucido on the phone. And I said, hey, Mr. Lucido, my name's John Shiha. I would like to talk to you about watch repair and, maybe helping you guys with your watch repair. And he said, yep, sounds like a great opportunity. I'm going to be traveling for the next couple of weeks. I'll give you a call when I get back. Really appreciate you calling. I'm like, oh, that went well. Great. So I'm going to sit tight for a couple of weeks. Well, in the interim, the guy that I split the 600 square foot office with was one of my best friends, and he had a travel agency, and his name is Charlie O'Neill. Shout out to High Definition Travel, and Next Travel, or whatever business he's just merged with, whatever name he's operating under. The guy's bought like 20 businesses since then. Just an absolute beast in the travel game. But a couple of days later, Charlie walks into my office and he says, hey, aren't you trying to get a hold of these Lucido people? I said, yeah. And I said, they're going to call me back in like 12 business days. And he goes, well, I just booked a senior trip for a girl, and her mom's contact on it is Fran Lucido, and her email is Fran@Lucido Jewelry. You want me to put you in touch? I'm like, sure. What can I hurt? So Fran, Vince's sister, who's in the Birmingham store, he sends an email, and within 10 minutes, I get a phone call. And she's just full of excitement. And we want to meet you, and we want to talk to you, and we want to, why don't you come in and talk with my nephew, Joey? So Joey and I meet, Vince's son, who's also in Birmingham, close friend of Frank's and mine. And so we sit down, and Joey calls his dad, and I find this out after the fact. Joey calls his dad, and he's like, hey, Dad, I just met this guy. We have to hire him. He's great. We just need to, he wants to talk to you about some watch repair or whatever, but we can use him in the organization. And Vince is like, I'm already talking to that guy. That's my guy. I found him. I'm going to meet with him. So it kind of became like a little competition of like who was going to meet with me next. And so I ended up meeting with Vince and Joe, the founders of the company. And we met quite a bit. We dated for, I think it was like 6 months of interviews. And I told him, I said, I want to be a partner in a watch repair business. And I want to open it with you as a Rolex dealer and enhance your business. And they saw the value in it. And Vince told me, he goes, listen, you seem like a really nice guy. We don't know you at all. So if you want, you can help us run our store here, run our store for a couple of years. And in 2 years, if we like what we see, then we'll do your watch repair thing. And at that point, I said, you know what? I don't really have anything to lose. And it was a good brand. And almost to the day, Vince called me into his office and he told me, he goes, and actually it's funny, when he told me, he's like, we'll do your thing in 2 years, just come work with us. I said, great. Like, you know, where do I sign? Where's my contract? And Vince stood up at his desk and put one of his, you know, put his knuckles down on one side to support himself and leaned over. He goes, this is my contract, and puts his hand out. And I don't know why I had so much confidence in that handshake. And it was the best deal I've ever made in my life. But after, you know, 2 years to almost the day, he came and said, you've been doing a great job. Just hit the ground running with your watch repair. And green light. We figured out everything and incorporated a company, and that's been going strong. That was almost 4 years ago now.
That's incredible.
And you got to think about the timing of where watches are. I got into the watch game. I remember my first watch was like 2012. I bought a 1969 Omega Speedmaster. It was like, all right, I'm done buying watches. I got a watch. I'm done. And watches, they say, are like tattoos, right? Like they just get more and addicting. And as soon as you buy one, you're looking at what do you want next. And for every different situation, you could have a new watch. Then I got a Breitling Navitimer. And then in 2014, I remember my first Rolex. It was a Submariner. And thinking to myself, like, this just has a different feel to it. It's just nothing better. But moving forward, obviously, then around, I remember you could walk into a Rolex dealer or a jewelry store and you could buy almost any watch you wanted. Well, then 2019 comes around, 2020-ish, post-COVID, and now you can't get watches. And they open up a watch repair center probably at the peak of, you know, obviously watches, especially your nice watches, aren't battery powered. They're, you know, it's a machine inside of it, right? And that needs to be oiled and maintained. And you feel like everyone now has, you know, hopefully tries to get a nice piece, and it needs to be maintained, you know, every 8 to 10 years. And they've opened up, you know, now John Shiha has this idea for watch repair at almost the perfect time in the industry.
So I have a question, John, in terms of, so like, shout out Matt Wenner, shout out Louisa at Rochester Lucido, who have taken care of me. First watch I got was my father's Datejust that he bought on my birthday back in 1994. I don't think it's ever been serviced, and that thing still runs. And, you know, we had an issue with the clasp, and I went in there and, you know, they took care of me. I'm like, hey, I don't know if this has ever been serviced. I don't know. Like, I want this to be, you know, a longevity play, because it's going to go to my sons. You know, the watch I'm wearing now is going to go to my other son. And, you know, I do have some others that I'm very much interested in. What does it look like from a full service on a Rolex or something like that? Like, what, you know, Louisa tried to explain it to me. I didn't fully understand everything that they're going to go through, but I am curious of what that process looks like, you know, from soup to nuts, you know, what a service on a watch is.
Yeah. I mean, to kind of draw the parallel to the auto industry, think about taking the engine out of the car completely, disassembling every part of the engine.
Frame.
Yeah. We're taking the movement out of the watch. We're disassembling every component, and we're inspecting them for wear. Right. We try to do that before we send them through a multi-step cleaning process, because you can kind of sometimes see wear in lubricant. You can see metal particles in lubricant. So we're inspecting every single component. Then our watchmaker, all of our certified watchmakers, our watchmakers are all certified. They're going to put it through a cleaning process, and they're going to reassemble your watch, replacing the parts that are worn. Right. And the majority of movement parts that we replace during your service, a lot of people don't know this, they're included in the price of your service, right? So if you have a worn wheel or a worn gear or a cracked jewel, you know, those are components that we're going to replace, and that's just included in the overall price. There are some things that are not included, but when we're repairing your watch, we're not looking to do it for, you know, as cheap as possible. We have our price set for that reason. Our pricing structure follows Rolex's almost to the letter. And what we do is we have this set pricing so that we can replace every single component that's worn, right? So it's not going to impact your value. It's not gonna impact it. And we're talking about strictly the movement at this point, right? Dial, hands, things like that. You replace those parts on certain watches, it can potentially impact your value.
Yeah.
But we disassemble everything, we reassemble it, we lubricate it, and then we put it on timing machines, calibration machines. These machines have microphones that are picking up the locking and unlocking of the escapement, which happens 28,000 times per hour.
Wow.
Over 28,000 times per hour. So if you think about that, we then calibrate them to that. They get the case is being polished as well, if you opt for that. Some people want it polished and some people don't want it polished. And if the watch is going to be polished and then the watchmaker puts the dial and hands back on, then they're married back together. They go inside of a pressure testing machine, which there's different ways we can pressure test, which super, it's pretty cool to understand how that works without getting super nerdy. But there's different ways to pressure test a case to make sure that it's water resistant to however deep the watch is.
Because a Submariner might be different than a Seamaster to a Datejust, right?
Yeah. It's 1,000 feet. Way deeper than ever go.
Yeah.
Frank's pool is only 500 meters deep. So,
I've had Frank on my boat several times and never once been to his pool, but we're not gonna bring that up right now.
Your family, I've seen your family. We got a pond out back. It suits you a little better. You know what I'm saying?
Natural springs.
Yeah. It's funny.
Our next podcast will be from the yacht.
My wife, I got her a Datejust back in the day, and after a couple kids and her wearing it as a daily, like never left it. It was a stainless steel piece, but it looked, and it was supposed to, the inner links were a polished stainless steel at one point, which quickly looked brushed because it was just so scratched, so beat up, baby puke in it. It was disgusting. Well, finally, I think she dropped it and the movement was off. Now there was a little shaking noise in it. Took it to Lucido. This was probably right before you guys even had the watch facility. But I'll never forget when it came back, because, Mark and I couldn't botch this up, and correct me if I'm wrong, John. 904L stainless steel is the grade of stainless steel on a Rolex, which is two companies in the whole world use that grade of stainless steel, NASA and Rolex. And the way that they were able to reshape or, finish this watch back and put it back together, it was like it was fresh out the box again, and it was that time, I think it was around $1,000 or whatever it was. But I remember that watch coming back and she was like, I don't know if I can wear it anymore. It's so pretty. It's so perfect. But it's amazing what can get done by just, refurbishing your watch or bringing it in to just get maintained. And I was really happy that we did that.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's the beauty to Rolex, right? I've said this before and I stand by this. Rolex is the best serially produced machine in the world. Period. There's no better car, no better gun, no better anything that's serially produced. There's no better machine that's made outside of Rolex, in my opinion. I've yet to find a brand. But
with the attention to detail, quality, precision, all those types of things.
Yeah, and even more so, which is so important, Rolex designs their watches to be serviced. They're manufacturing a watch, understanding that in 10 years from now, somebody's going to be in there servicing it, polishing it, and going to be working on the watch. Think about how many products that we interact with on a daily basis that are not designed for service.
They're meant to fail.
Yeah.
They're meant to fail. And then even the things that should be serviced. I was talking with somebody the other day and they're like, yeah, I need to replace my headlight, but I got to take off like my front bumper and like 17 other things. And I'm like, that's interesting.
Not very efficient.
No.
Right, exactly. So I really think that is the real value. And then, of course, if something can be serviced well, and like you said, Frankie could come back after 10 years looking brand new, that just adds to the long-term value. And that's why, people say, well, is Rolex a good investment? Yeah, it is comparatively to anything else, because what can you use and enjoy for years and it's still going to have value, right? It's still going to be worth something.
And not just money-wise, but what it's worth. Because even like Jake and his father, I have watches that I plan on passing on to my sons. My dad has one that's going to pass it on to me. It's something that stays in the family, and it not just appreciates monetarily, but it appreciates for the sake of, you know, family and history and memories. And I could think about, there was one watch that I bought. It was on, I got a dealer called me on my third born child. So I bought myself almost like a push present. So like my wife or whatever, you know, but I'll never forget that watch and like where I was when I bought it, or you kind of remember every time that call you get for something like that.
To your point, like, so it all started from, you know, my dad. When I was born, he got this. And, you know, it's funny when we're going through the, you know, hey, what do you want done? There's a ding, you know, there's a big gouge in the crown. Like, do you want us to replace it? I was like, no.
Yeah.
No. And I love how Lucido's like, they're well enjoyed. Right. And you think about it, like, you have memories of things. Like, you have memories of like the car that your dad took you to practice in, but that car's gone. Yeah. Right. You have memories of, you know, a boat you grew up on with your grandfather. That thing's gone. Yeah. These things are meant to last, you know, time. And each one of my boys is going to get one. And, you know, if they ever get rid of, you know, they call my father Zaz. So if they ever get rid of Zaz's watch, I'm going to haunt them till, you know, the rest of their days. But that's the value that I don't think you can put a price on, which I think is why this is drawn me to it. Right. Yeah. That's the big thing for me when it comes to watches. Like, regardless of the price, regardless of what is going to happen, you know, 10 years, 15, 20 years down the line, it's a tangible piece of your family history.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Patek Philippe has came up and for a long time, they've been using one of the best pieces of marketing we've ever seen, that you don't actually own a Patek Philippe. You merely are taking care of it for the next generation. And that is, it resonates with their brand, but it really is applicable to any quality timepiece at all, you know. And the thing too is, like, you don't have to spend 10, 15, 20,000 to get a quality watch, right? There's Seikos from the 70s that are highly collectible. And one of the coolest watch stories in the industry, as far as I'm concerned, is a Seiko chronograph that's highly sought after and collected from the late 60s, early 70s. And imagine if you bought one of those for $50 back then and you left it to your kid, right? So it doesn't have to be, you know, a $20,000 watch for it to be like, oh, I'm going to leave this to my kids. Any price point. I mean, you could come into Lucido Fine Jewelry and you can find an incredible quality watch for $500. That will last you 50 years. So it'll last you 100 years.
Speaking of other watches, and you guys service, you know, the brands that you have, but do you service, and just for everyone out there, you service everything? And what is the quality, you know, is the standards set forth? Of course, you guys have, hey, this is our standard. Is there anything that you have to follow for other brands and stuff like that, you know, what does that look like for Lucido?
Again, I want to the LWS's thing, but like you had to recruit watchmakers from all over the country to come to Troy, Michigan, is where you guys built this out, correct?
Yeah. I mean, that was a challenge for sure. I think our biggest challenge in our industry is finding people, just because it's such a niche industry, right? A lot of young people don't know that we'll hire them, we'll sponsor them to go to school, and they can come back and make, you know, $80, $90, $100,000, no problem fixing watches. I mean, it's really incredible, and it's something that you can do. So to answer your initial question, we are authorized to service right now, I believe, about 35 brands. We're a national service center for Gerald Charles, which is a hot up and coming brand. And if you're a real watch nerd, you know who Gerald Genta is. And Gerald Genta had his own brand called Gerald Charles that was resurrected. And
for those who don't know, John, he designed the Aquanaut Nautilus, or the Nautilus and the Royal Oak, correct?
Those are just two of so many. He was probably the most influential designer in the watch industry ever. I mean, Bulgari Octo Finissimo, Cartier Pasha, Audemars Royal Oak, Patek Nautilus, and there's probably IWC Ingenieur is his. So, I mean, there's all these models that are still in production to this day. And think about it. Royal Oak and Nautilus are two of the most sought after watches in the industry right now. Specific models that he designed. So He has his own brand. We're one of five or six, I believe, don't quote me on that, retailers in the country that have Gerald Charles. And the owners of the company are just super nice guys. And they said, hey, will you be our national service center? So we're the national service center for them. And then we're also authorized to fix 33 or 34 other brands. So when you think about that process, everything has to be in alignment with that brand standard. So it's not just Rolex, but pick any brand, right? Could be Panerai. They're gonna make sure your people are trained. That means I'm sending somebody down to Panerai for 4 or 5 days. They're going through a training process. They're becoming certified to work on that set of product inside of Panerai. They're also going to look at my workshop and our facility. What tools do you have? What's your cleanliness? How are you keeping rooms separated? How are you, they're looking at things even like airflow. Like I have 2 rooms that have negative airflow because we're pulling air out of them. And then we have positive airflow in the clean rooms that we're pushing air into. So things like that, they're looking at to say, okay, your facility is there. So they're looking at the watchmaker themselves, the facility, making sure that the watchmaker is trained, then making sure you have specific tools to work on their watch. This one movement might need a specific tool to support this post while you take off this plate. Otherwise, the whole thing will fall apart on you. And it's understanding those really specific items on specific movements. And then a brand will say, okay, you've gone through all of this. You can fix our product and you're authorized. So we've done that with over 35 brands.
Wow. And does each, I don't know how many techs you guys have, but are they versed in every single watch, or hey, this guy's siloed for these 5, or these guys, how does that operate for you?
That's an excellent question. So we have 2 terms because we're set up more in a production environment, right? We have a pretty big staff in our facility, and we have the best staff in our facility. We really do have a special group of people. So shout out to each and every one of them. They really, our team right now is just really special. But we have what we call technicians, and those are people that are disassembling watches, prepping watches, getting the movements out of the cases so that they can go to what we would call a watchmaker. And the term watchmaker is a little bit misleading because we're not making watches, we're repairing them. But that's been the industry term for a long time. So we have technicians and we have watchmakers. So the technician will disassemble the case, and the movement will go to a watchmaker, and then the case and bracelet will go off to our polishing department, where we have trained polishers. So those brands we were just talking about, training people, we've sent polishers for training at brands to understand exactly how to polish their watches. But yeah, to answer the question, there are certain watchmakers on our team that are authorized and trained on, say, Breitling, but they might not be trained on IWC. But our goal is to always get everybody trained on everything. It's just timing and if you can get them out to the trainings for the brands. But there are some people that have certain brand trainings that others don't.
And how often do you need to be recertified? Is it dependent on brand, or do you guys have your own set standards?
Yeah, it's dependent on brand, and really the quality of work speaks for itself. Being a watchmaker is not something that you can fake. You cannot, because the proof is in the pudding. We're taking the movement that you just serviced, and we're putting it through in a crazy amount of quality control, 5 days of quality control after you've tested it and said that it's in specifications for timing. So if every single watch you're doing is coming back, something needs to be looked at, right? Mm-hmm. But then we have some people that are doing a lot of watches and doing volume, and it's some of the cleanest work you've seen in the industry, right? So one of the things I'm very proud of is we're known for across the country for our quality, because Rolex has done a program, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called Rolex Certified Pre-Owned. So what happens is you have to service that watch, and you have to send it into Rolex to be certified. So the quality control that we're doing in-house, that we do on every single watch, right? Frank brings his watch in, gives it to Matt. Matt gets it to us. We fix the watch. It goes through quality control. It goes back to Frank. No problem. A Rolex Certified Pre-Owned watch, We service it. It goes back to Rolex. We ship it to Rolex, and they're looking at the work we're doing.
And you're saying Switzerland, like
that it happens. It happens domestically.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So we send it to them here. They look at every watch. They make sure that the dial and hands and bezel are intended for that watch, and that's why Rolex Certified Pre-Owned makes so much sense, right? You'll hear some of these gray market guys on social media saying, "Hey, don't go pay $3,000 more for a Submariner because it's Rolex Certified Pre-Owned." Why wouldn't you do that? It's the absolute insurance policy. You're buying yourself a $3,000. You're paying a premium to make sure that the watch you're buying is not stolen, is not fake, is authentic.
Yeah.
And so, so I mean, that's where you to answer the question in its entirety. You don't really need to be recertified, because if you get rusty, it's going to come out. It's going to come out pretty quickly, and we're going to try to rectify whatever the issue is.
Sure. So you brought up something that is always interesting to me, is like, obviously in the car business that we're in, is like fraud is huge, right? That's a big thing that we're dealing with on a daily basis. And I see it sometimes in Rolex. Is like, everyone's trying to have like a knockoff, or, this, that, and the other. So, how much of that are you guys seeing? Like, does it actually flow through your store of like someone trying to be like, hey, is this real? I'm trying to do a deal with this guy. And, are fakes kind of getting like kind of legit?
So 2 great points. One, we have people all the time that are like, hey, I'm buying this watch off my buddy. I'm buying this watch off of Facebook Marketplace. I'm going to bring it into you guys for an authentication. Unless you have trained watchmakers that work on movements every single day, open the watch and look at the movement and look at it thoroughly, it is very easy to assume a watch is real.
Oh my gosh.
So like from like weight, from movement, like, so unless you actually get in, open the hood and get into the components, so the guys you see on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and they're like, they pick it up, they feel it, they do like, oh yeah, I think it's real. Like, they're full of shit.
They could. I mean,
some of those guys are really well versed, right? And they've been doing it for a long time, right? So I'm not going to try to discredit them, but it's very hard for me, and even myself, even our head technical director, who Frank knows, Brian, our head estimator, Carson. Between the 3 of us, there's not a lot of things we have not seen, right? So there's been times where the 3 of us have sat down and we're kind of scratching our heads. We're like, what are we missing? Because this doesn't look right, but it doesn't look wrong, and we have to do a deep dive.
Yeah.
What for like the gold pieces? Because obviously gold pieces weigh a little bit more. Can you be able to tell by just like the weight a little bit, or do the gold pieces have so much realism to them that they actually weigh a little bit more than like a stainless piece?
There's fakes and there's really good fakes.
Gotcha.
Right, like I'll never forget. I was in watchmaking school, and I was working after school at a jewelry store called Brent Miller Jewelers in Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And this guy brings in this white gold Date-8, and I'm like, this is so sweet. It's a white gold Date-8. It's beautiful. And he's like, yeah, I got in a bar fight and I busted up the bracelet. I'm like, okay, I could probably order you some links or find you some links and try to repair the bracelet or whatever. And then I got a link, and I went to put the link in, and if I recall, it didn't fit properly. It just didn't line up properly. And then I called the customer. I'm like, hey, this is not fitting. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm gonna have to send it into Rolex. He's like, no, you can't send it into Rolex. It's fake. It's a knockoff. And the watch was solid 18 karat gold. It must have been, I don't know, at the time, $8,000 worth of gold.
Yeah. And
it was a super fake.
And
the guy knew that.
And was okay with it?
Yeah.
So they'll use real gold and fakes, I guess, right?
Yeah. So instead of spending 30 grand on it back then, he spent 10 grand. And to him, he's one of the people that are wearing watches for the wrong reason.
Right.
Right. If you're willing to buy a fake, if you're wearing a fake, you're a fake. Like that's
just
good
logic.
I just can't hang out with people that wear fake anything.
Right.
Like go buy Kate Spade purse instead of a fake Louis Vuitton.
Yeah.
Nobody cares that it says Louis Vuitton. You wear that for you. If it brings you enjoyment, it makes you happy, wear it. The fake one does not bring you enjoyment. You're tricking yourself if you think that's cool.
Right.
But same thing in the watch industry.
Yeah.
Like, there's some people like, well, no, I bought a fake watch for vacation. I'm like, you bought a fake Submariner for $300 from Chinatown for vacation. Go buy a Seiko. Go buy a Seiko 5 for $300, and it's going to be way cooler and a way better watch. So, but yeah, there's a lot of fakes out there. We see it all the time, and Rolex has invested a ton. I mean, again, the reason why they're one of the best businesses in the world, they've invested so much in the backside that the consumer doesn't see to prevent all this, right? So there's a global software program that only certain dealers in the country have access to. But if a watch comes into us, we can put a serial number in this software, and we can kind of see the history. And if it's flagged and it's reported stolen or something doesn't look right, they're going to request that we send it back to them so they can investigate.
Wow. Yeah, because that was, I mean, you're just, hurting their product, right? So they have to do something to rectify that.
You're talking about, John, so maybe some new brands that everyone kind of knows, the Pateks, the APs, the Rolex. You brought up Gerald Charles. I know Glashütte Original is one of the newer brands. Would you say those are some of the more talk about those kind of brands, the ones that are kind of coming up through the ranks and that you really like and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. Like Glashütte, what an insane value, right? You're getting a really well-made watch, really well finished, and you're getting some complications, right? So when I say the term complication, that's anything in addition to the timekeeping on a watch. So, for example, you have your Submariner on right now. If you look down at it, it has the date. That's the date. That's a date complication.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that the watch can do in addition to timekeeping is called a complication. So when we look at a brand like Glashütte, they're doing things like moon phase and power reserves and the finishing that are, they're doing a big date complication where it's displayed in two windows, kind of two discs that are inside of one window. And when you look at those things at the price point, it's really hard to beat. I'm a huge value guy, right? So when I buy a watch, I'm usually buying it because I see a ton of value in it. I have Seikos that are $500, and I'm like, this is a sick value at $500. I'm wearing a Sky Dweller, which is an annual calendar, which is probably one of the best values in the world. You're getting an annual calendar with a GMT. It's a Rolex in-house movement that they fully manufacture. And it's $16,000 now, right? So it's just a great value.
To that point, you talk about values. If someone's trying to get into the watch game and they're like, hey, I don't want to, I don't have a relationship, to spend, $30,000. I don't have the money to spend $30,000 on a Rolex or something nice. What's kind of your, like, hey, this is what I would start my addiction with?
And talk about gaining that, trying to build a relationship with somebody. Maybe you want to get into would like to get a Rolex at some point, or
why that's important.
Yeah, talk about that relationship and building that type of trust with a certified AD.
Well, I mean, buying from an authorized dealer brings a ton of value. You know what you're getting. You're paying retail for the product. There's no question marks. Again, it's an insurance policy. The only thing you have to do when you're buying from an authorized dealer is be patient, right? I love when people are like, hey, go in the safe and grab me a white Daytona. I'm like, yeah, because we're not in the business of selling watches. We just let them collect dust in the back, so we can't sell them to you, right? Like, we have to keep the lights on here like any other business, right? So I always think that's funny. I always tell people just be patient, and really the relationship is easy, Frank. You're a perfect example. You're a loyal, committed customer. I mean, obviously you're our friend first and foremost, but everything you do is through Lucido Fine Jewelry, and we don't want to just help you get a Daytona. We want to help you take care of everything. We want to be your go-to for whatever. So when you talk about starting the collection and starting a relationship, it has to make sense for you, for the consumer. And that's something that we understand really well. If somebody's coming in and they're saying, hey, I have $1,000 price point and I'm looking for a Father's Day gift, it doesn't make any sense showing them a $7,000 watch. right? Let's help the customer find what they want and in the price point they want. And we have a ton of great options, right? And as far as starting that relationship, we talk about people coming in and the customers that are coming in. I right now in my career get a ton of enjoyment, like helping the kid who's buying his first Tissot PRX, and he comes in, he's like, yeah, this is my first nice watch. I've spent an hour with a young man who was buying a Tissot PRX, like, I don't know, a month ago. I was with him for like an hour on the floor talking to him. And then I kind of walked back into my office, and somebody on our team was like, what did that guy buy? Like, thinking I was going to say like a $60,000 something or other. I was like, a PRX. I'm like, you were with him for an hour. And I'm like, yeah, but that's where the fun is for me, right? Because I'm a watch guy through and through. Like, I'm a nerd, right? I'm a watch nerd. So for me, like, I'm going to hang out with that kid who's buying his first Seiko, his first Tissot, maybe even a Tudor. And, he's read about it for hours on the internet before he came in. I'm going to take more enjoyment out of that interaction, as opposed to the guy who's like, well, I have a blue sub and I have a black sub, and now I really need a green sub. Okay, we feel so bad for you. We're gonna, let's get you your 19th Rolex, which is great, and I respect it, and I understand that collection and that collector. I do, but I really think there's something cool about helping, young people or anybody. I mean, I had a guy who came in here who was retired, and he got into watch collecting. And he just loved the brand Seiko, and he wanted to buy every single thing they make. He wanted to buy their $5,000 product, their $6,000 product, their $200 product. So, as far as starting the relationship, I think people see Lucido Fine Jewelry and make an assumption that, we make these huge amounts of money on everything that we do, and our margins are huge. And, if you're going to that store, it might be expensive. I don't know why that's sometimes. Frank, you can maybe speak to this. I don't know if people maybe have that thought about an authorized dealer in general, or seeing the Rolex crown on our doors, but we have something for everybody.
1,000%. Even my dad, the first time when I was like, just go see Matt and John and Joey and them. He's like, oh no, I don't want to spend that much money. Like something for my mom for Mother's Day. I was like, Dad, they have everything, or like, it's not like you're gonna have to walk out of there for thousands of dollars every time. They got something for everybody.
You hit it on the head too, and John, it's like the top down, right? So to your point, Frank, like, you introduced me to Matt, and Matt's taken care of me ever since, and I love the guy, and it shows in his everyone else that's on the floor. Like, there was a piece I wanted for my wife. I wanted, they didn't have it, but Louisa over in the Rochester store, she's been in contact with me darn near every day. Like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we think is going to happen. Like, giving me renderings, showing pictures of it. Like, it's been an incredible experience, and it's not, it's nothing crazy, but it's something that my wife wanted. So, the way that you guys take care of people, is truly, truly impressive. So you guys are doing just an incredible job.
And again, you think this with good dealers too, is if everyone in this business, it's all about like referrals in a way. Mm-hmm. I've never once, that's why I'll continue to send people to Lucido Fine Jewelry, or I'll send it to Terry at Suburban Ford of Ferndale, because number one, they're my friends, but number two, every time somebody leaves, they come back and they're like, what an experience that was. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what's cool about building up a cool network like what we have here in Southeast Michigan.
I always laugh because I know for a fact, and Matt's brought this up a few times, when I went to pick this up, he was like mad it didn't do like the full Monty, because I think we were kind of in a rush, and he wanted to do the full experience of my full Rolex, and we're like, we gotta go, I got stuff to do, but just the pride that all of you guys take in the work is truly exceptional. So I'm gonna plug it again. I'll plug it for the rest of my days. That Lucido Fine Jewelry is the only place that I know
I got it.
Auto hauler will go to.
One last thing I want to bring up too is, obviously everyone is hyped about the Rolexes, and then last month there was the new releases, and then you were down. And one before that too is one thing I want to bring awareness to is just like the car brands, right? Like Porsche's made here, Ferrari's here, Ford is here. Watch brands have the same thing. So Seiko, John's brought up a couple times. That's Japanese made craftsmanship, correct, John? You got Glashütte is German made, Rolex is Swiss made. Like, every different some brands are all based in different, it started in Switzerland. Most of your stuff is Swiss made, but every country's kind of taken certain prides into certain brands, which I always think is pretty cool as well. But then John just went to Watches and Wonders out in Europe and came back. So what was kind of the hype out there? What were some of the maybe new releases that you kind of liked, or what do you think is going to be the one that's hard to get this year, that kind of thing, in your take from that?
Yeah, I mean, in the Rolex world, the entire collector community is waiting in early April for these watches to drop and for the Rolex website to be updated so they can see what's new for the year. And Rolex was celebrating their 100-year anniversary, and they did a Jubilee dial, right? So anytime you hear the term Jubilee, obviously Rolex makes a Jubilee bracelet. But when you hear Jubilee in terms of a dial, it's kind of where it has the print Rolex, and it reads both side to side and up and down. And that watch is very colorful, and it's a very artistic dial. Not really traditional Rolex, in my opinion. But there's something about that watch that it's just absolutely stunning. Like it's very, very attractive looking watch, and I don't know why, because it's not something I traditionally would like myself, to be honest. I mean, Frank, you and I talk watches all the time. In my, I kind of have a traditional take on watches. So that one was definitely a shocker for me, because I put it on my wrist and I said, oh my God, I think I'm going to buy this multicolored dial for my collection that has pink and yellow and green on it. So it's a really, really cool piece from them. I think additionally, to see some of the things that Gerald Charles is doing. We talk about perpetual calendars, right? So I was talking about my Sky Dweller earlier. That's an annual calendar. And an annual calendar means that the watch needs to be set once a year, the last day in February. Otherwise, it knows 31 days in which month it is, which is insane, right? It's a mechanical object that's driven by a spring that knows 30 versus 31 days. It's an annual calendar. A perpetual calendar, same concept, mechanical movement driven by a spring, and it only needs to be set every 4 years in the leap year. Otherwise, it knows the days of the month, which is pretty insane. So Gerald Charles did a perpetual calendar, and if you know anything about Gerald Charles, their case shape is very unique. Gerald Genta, the designer we were talking about earlier, did a very unique case shape for this brand and for this watch. And the movement is not a round movement shoved inside of this uniquely shaped case. The movement was manufactured to be the exact shape of the case, which from a watchmaking perspective and from a difficulty perspective, very hard to do. So to me, as a watchmaker, when I'm looking at that, and they're manufacturing a perpetual calendar inside of this uniquely shaped case that's not round or square, and if you haven't seen it, look it up, Gerald Charles. It is really, really cool to see a perpetual calendar movement in that. So those are some of the things that I took away from Watches and Wonders that I thought was really impressive. And of course, we had the opportunity to sit down with Grand Seiko, and I mean, talk about value. The stuff they're doing in the $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 price point. It's really, really well made product. Really beautiful product.
Love it.
Well, John, we're coming up on time here. We want to be respectful of that, but any other last closing remarks, anything that people want to be on the lookout for, anything else you want to mention before we sign off here?
No, I appreciate you guys having me. This was fun. I think we should talk about watches once a week like this. So
we say that about most of our podcasts. Like this, we obviously bring out topics we're passionate about and we like. This is another one I could go for another 2+ hours. So maybe we'll have to do something sidebar one of these days and have a conversation. But dude, you're a wealth of knowledge. You're a great dude. We appreciate you coming on, and just very, very thankful for that. Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, Frankie.
Thanks, Johnny. See you, buddy.
We'll see you guys.
Thank you for watching the most recent episode of Dealer Out of Office, sponsored by Auto Hauler Exchange.
Auto Hauler Exchange is a B2B marketplace where our customers post their shipping opportunities direct to carriers. The technology and the operations team I have behind me take care of everything else.